Welcome to the deep dive. Today, let's maybe forget the long-range forecast for a bit. We're really zeroing in on what a warming world actually looks like, right now. We've pulled together some pretty compelling recent data, scientific findings, stuff that shows the real tangible effects. Think of it as cutting through the noise, trying to understand the immediate signals our planet's sending.
Exactly. And the amount of material we looked at, it's pretty broad. It touches on basically everything. Atmospheric changes, ice melting, oceans, even direct impacts on us, on human health. What's really key to get from the start is these aren't just separate things happening. They're all connected, like threads in a bigger pattern.
Right. And that's our goal for you today, to sort of navigate all this info, pull out the key things, the understandable insights. We're not here to just drown you in stats. It's more about shedding light on what these changes actually mean, in concrete terms.
Okay.
Okay, so let's dive in. Maybe start with something really basic, the heat. All the heat we've been feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah, the headline number is pretty stark. 2023 was, well, definitely the hottest year on record globally. It clocked in at 1.48 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels.
Okay, 1.48 C.
Yeah, and that's not just a tiny bit higher. It's a really significant jump in the planet's average temperature.
And didn't we also see, like, a record month within that record year?
We did. July 2023, that went down as the hottest single month ever documented.
Wow. Yeah.
And we're talking serious heat. Temperatures soaring over 45 degrees Celsius.
Wow. That's what, 113 Fahrenheit?
Yeah, 113F. And that was across different continents, too. Europe, Asia, parts of the U.S.
It's one thing to see a number like that, but feeling that kind of intense, sustained heat, that's something else.
And what's kind of fascinating, and frankly a bit concerning, is that this isn't just like looking back, it's happening now. Already in 2024, parts of India saw heat index values over 50 Celsius.
50 C. And the heat index, that's the feels like temperature, right? With humidity.
Exactly. It's crucial because it combines the air temp with humidity, telling us how it actually feels to our bodies. And high humidity makes even sort of medium-high temperatures feel really oppressive.
Yeah.
Dangerous even. So those readings, they really paint a picture of the immediate challenges people are facing right now.
Okay, so from that oppressive heat in the air, let's maybe shift to ice. On land, the data on melting glaciers, polar ice, that seems just as compelling. Greenland, for example, I saw a number there. Something like 4,700 billion tons of ice lost between 2002 and 2022.
Yeah, it's a mind-boggling figure, isn't it? 4,700 billion tons. It's almost impossible to really visualize that much frozen water just vanish.
And it's not just gone, right? It has to go somewhere.
Exactly. It's not an abstract loss. It has a direct measurable impact on global sea levels. That huge amount of ice from Greenland alone, it added about 13.5 millimeters to sea level rise.
13.5 millimeters just from Greenland in that time.
And on top of that, the Arctic region itself is warming incredibly fast, like 3 to 4 times faster than the global average.
3 to 4 times. Wow.
Yeah, and that just puts the accelerator down on all this ice melt.
And it's not only the massive ice sheets, is it? Like, closer to home for many people, the Alps.
Right. The glaciers in the Alps, they've seen a really rapid decline, too. They lost about 10% of their total ice volume in just 2 years.
10% in 2 years?
Yeah, between 2022 and 2023.
That's incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And has huge implications for, like, fresh water supplies there, right? In a heavily populated area.
Absolutely. Major implications. And all that meltwater, plus something else called thermal expansion.
Ah, right. The water itself expanding as it gets warmer, like a balloon.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
As the ocean water warms up, it expands. Seems small, maybe, but across the vastness of the oceans, it adds up significantly to the overall rise in sea levels. Globally, since about 1880, we've seen a rise of roughly 21 to 24 centimeters.
Okay, 21 to 24 centimeter total.
But what's really noteworthy is how it's speeding up. More than 7 centimeters of that rise happened in just the last 20 years.
Wow, so the pace is increasing. And we're seeing the results of that already in coastal places. Jakarta, Indonesia's capital. I read it's sinking incredibly fast, like 10 to 25 centimeters a year.
Yeah, parts of it are. And projections suggest parts could be underwater by 2050.
That's a major city facing a huge crisis really soon.
Yeah.
It really brings the scale home, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's not just, far off places. Here in the U.S., look at Miami. They now get flooding more than 10 times a year.
10 times? Compared to what?
Well, back in the 1990s, it was more like once or twice a year, typically.
So that's a huge increase. Really disruptive for daily life.
Definitely. Very disruptive.
And unfortunately, the picture doesn't seem much brighter when we look at extreme weather. Storms. Hurricane Ian back in 2022, The damage was immense, wasn't it? Something like $113 billion?
That's right. $113 billion dollars in the U.S. alone, one of the costliest storms ever recorded.
Just staggering, the financial hit.
It is. And look, it's complex science linking any single storm only to climate change.
Sure, sure. Attribution is tricky.
Right. But the overall trend,
Yeah.
that's becoming clear in the data. Globally, the proportion of really intense storms, Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, cyclones, it's gone up
Yeah.
by about 25 to 30% since the 1980s.
Okay, so more of the strongest storms happening.
Yeah, and a key factor seems to be record-high ocean heat.
Because warmer water fuels the storms, more energy.
Exactly. Warmer oceans provide more energy for these storms to draw on, to intensify, often rapidly. This worrying feedback loop, really. Warmer seas, stronger storms.
Right. And this warming isn't just oceans and air. You mentioned land, too. Wildfires seem to be a huge issue now.
A massive issue.
Yeah.
Canada's 2023 wildfire season was, well, totally unprecedented. Over 18 million hectares burned.
18 million. How does that compare to normal?
It's more than 7 times their usual annual average.
Yeah.
Just enormous.
7 times the average. Hard to even grasp that scale. And Australia's Black Summer a few years back,
Yeah.
that was also devastating, right?
Absolutely horrific. 2019-2020 burned through 186,000 square kilometers. And the impact on wildlife. Estimates were around 3 billion animals killed or displaced. Just devastating.
And the fires themselves are one thing, but the smoke, that affects huge areas, too.
No, definitely. That's a critical point. The impact goes way beyond the burn zone. In 2023, that smoke from the Canadian fires led to over 120 days of unhealthy air quality in big North American cities.
Yeah, I remember that. New York, Chicago.
Right. I recall last summer, the air quality where I was, it was so bad you could almost taste the smoke indoors sometimes.
It's a direct public health problem then, affecting millions.
Absolutely. A major public health concern.
Okay, switching gears slightly, but related. Water, droughts, water scarcity, that seems increasingly critical globally.
It really is. The UN estimates that over 2.3 billion people are already living in countries facing water stress.
2.3 billion. Wow.
And some places are dealing with really severe long-term droughts. Look at the Colorado River Basin in the U.S. They're in a 23-year mega drought.
23 years.
Yeah. And scientists are saying it's likely the worst in about 1,200 years.
1,200 years. That has massive implications for farming, water supply, everything in the West.
Huge implications.
And we've seen similar things elsewhere, right? China's Yangtze River.
Yeah, in 2022, the Yangtze hit record low levels. That's a vital river for transport, irrigation, hydropower. The low levels cut power generation, even forced some factories to shut down temporarily.
Shows how tightly water and the economy are linked.
Exactly. And it's not just human systems feeling the strain. Natural ecosystems are under immense pressure, too. The Great Barrier Reef, for instance, such an important, iconic ecosystem. It's had 5 mass coral bleaching events just since 2016.
5 since 2016.
Yeah, and by 2022, something like 90% of the reef had been affected by bleaching.
And that's driven directly by the warmer ocean water.
Directly, yeah.
We're even seeing animals changing their behavior, aren't we? Like birds migrating differently.
We are. Migratory birds, both in Europe and North America, they're arriving at their breeding grounds much earlier, sometimes up to 21 days earlier, compared to how it was back in the 1980s.
3 weeks earlier. That must throw things off, ecologically speaking.
It can definitely disrupt long-established balances, food availability, nesting times, all that.
And when you add up all these pressures, climate change, habitat loss, the threat to biodiversity sounds immense.
It is alarming. The UN figure is stark. Potentially 1 million species are at risk of extinction.
1 million species, yeah.
Due to these combined pressures, it's a profound potential loss for the planet's web of life.
And these big environmental shifts, they're hitting our food systems too, aren't they? Perhaps unsurprisingly.
Yes, definitely seeing direct effects there. Global wheat production, for instance, it dropped by about 3.5% in 2022.
Okay, 3.5%. Why was that?
Largely down to intense heat waves in big wheat-producing areas like India and China.
And it's not just staple crops like wheat, right? Things like coffee.
Coffee, too, yeah. Big coffee-growing regions in Brazil, Colombia, they saw major yield losses. Anywhere from 30 to 50% drops in the 2021-22 seasons, mainly due to climate extremes.
30 to 50%. That's huge. Impacts farmers, obviously, but also global supply prices.
Absolutely. Direct economic hits, and it affects the supply of something many of us drink every day.
And ultimately, drops in food production. That links to food insecurity, right? Which seems to be rising.
It's a major contributing factor, yes. The issue of food insecurity is deeply concerning and growing. The World Food Program estimated over 345 million people faced acute food insecurity in 2023.
345 million.
hmm And just to give context, that's up by about 200 million people since just 2019.
A massive increase in just a few years.
It is. And the warming climate is also creating better conditions for certain diseases to spread. Dengue fever is a big example. Cases globally have increased something like 30-fold in the last 50 years.
30 times. Wow.
Yeah. And it's spreading into new areas now, too. Parts of Europe, the southern U.S., places it wasn't typically found before.
And even diseases we thought were under control or gone from certain areas.
All right. We're seeing that, too. Lyme disease cases in Canada, for example, have gone up quite a bit. And that seems linked to warmer temperatures, letting the ticks that carry it survive further north.
Expanding their habitat.
Exactly. And alarmingly, we're even seeing malaria reappear in some areas where it had been basically eradicated.
Okay. So heat, ice, sea level, storms, fires, drought, ecosystems, food, disease. It covers so much. And finally, the oceans themselves. You mentioned ocean heat earlier, fueling storms.
Yes, we can't forget the ocean's central role here. They're like the planet's main heat sink. They absorb the vast majority, over 90% of the extra heat trapped by greenhouse gases. And in 2023, we saw the highest ocean temperatures ever recorded.
But soaking up all that heat isn't free, right? It has consequences for the ocean itself.
Absolutely not free. Huge consequences. Ocean acidity, for one. Because the oceans also absorb CO2, they've become about 30% more acidic since the industrial era began.
30% more acidic.
Yeah. And that's a massive threat to things like coral reefs, shellfish. Organisms with shells or skeletons are really vulnerable.
Which form the base of many marine food webs.
Exactly. So it ripples upwards. And another thing is marine heat waves. These are extended periods of unusually warm ocean temperatures.
Like heat waves on land, but in the sea.
Precisely. And their frequency has basically quadrupled since the 1980s.
Quadrupled.
Yeah. And these events can cause massive die-offs of marine life, hammer coral reefs, really disrupt fisheries, just devastate ocean health.
So putting it all together, it's really clear these aren't just, random separate incidents. Record heat, melting ice, rising seas, stronger storms, more fires, droughts, ecosystems struggling, food impacts, health impacts. It really does all seem interconnected, doesn't it? A complex web of change.
It is, exactly. If you step back and look at that bigger picture, it becomes really clear these aren't just isolated environmental issues. They are tangible, connected signs of a rapidly warming planet. And each change often influences or worsens the others. It's complex, sometimes in surprising ways.
Which kind of brings us to a final point, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Considering all these clear changes, all backed by data that we've talked through, is there one area that really stands out most to you? And what further questions does that specific thing raise for you? We'd really encourage you just to take a moment, reflect on this info, maybe dig a bit deeper into the parts you find most significant or maybe most concerning.